Washington County too.
Yeah, well, you know that FFA programs, if they're run well in high schools, those are great opportunities for kids that might not be involved in some of the other more traditional kinds of leadership roles. But the FFA curriculum and the kinds of expectations for those students, I've gone to a couple of FFA kind of conventions and competitions over the years when I was a principal, and I was astonished at how really powerful some of that activity can be for kids learning leadership skills, parliamentary skills. I mean, the whole gamut.
Once, when again, you talk about, kids that could be somewhat marginalized or not in other mainstream programs, this is another one that's a great opportunity for different kids, like I said, to get leadership skills or kind of connecting with other like-minded individuals. It's a pretty neat program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so there, and my son's wife, she was real active in all that stuff, and they grew up on raising cattle and lambs and like I said, all kinds of critters, rabbits, the chickens. If they got chickens, they just run loose till the coyotes get them.
In my younger, wilder days, I liked going to the county and state fairs and cruising the 4-H section.
Yeah. Well, when I first went to Barlow in 1990 as principal, we had an FFA program and we were still offering tractor driving.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was a part of the curriculum. And I was kind of dumbfounded, although I was up in Hood River before that as a principal, but I got down there in Barlow and part of the curriculum.
Well, that would make sense because as a Reynolds student and graduate, and no offense to anyone from Barlow listening, but we called it Cow Pie High. As reference to Barlow. Of
course, yeah.
I'm sure they had a name for us. I just never cared to learn it.
Yeah, I don't know. When I was, of course, I was even earlier than that, Greg, when I was going to Reynolds, and they built Barlow in 1968 is when it opened. I was only the I was the 1, 2, 3. I was only the fourth principal at Barlow in 1990.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat school. I mean, I've attended some things like in their auditorium. I mean, it's a nice place.
Well, I'll tell you right now, after this bond issue that Gresham Barlow had, because they had a $300 million bond, they put probably I'd say close to 80 million into Sam Barlow. And it is a fabulous auditorium, and they just did really some fabulous work on it. Greg, we're still we're not broadcasting, right?
We are live on YouTube.
Okay, well, I'll save this comment then. No, I guess I can say it. The property on Arata,
yes,
next to my place on the on the east side there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's going to be closing.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we talked again. I had some more conversations with the agent, and we were still looking at that property. We passed on it though. It was I just couldn't get any kind of they wanted too much money for it, like we've talked. For me,
Mm-hmm.
not maybe not for everybody, but for us. But anyway, I think it's pending, and what the agent said is they're planning on a fourplex there.
Okay, I mean that's the tricky part on that one is there's still a moratorium on Arata Road for 11 more months to actually connect.
Oh, is there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so I would assume that fourplex would have to go across the back of that property, the rear of it.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Kind of have almost like a driveway off of Arata, and then kind of just a long little
Yeah,
access little local driveway thing.
yeah. Yeah, so anyway, it's pending, but things can go wrong. So
Yeah, I was gonna say the land use on that one, figuring out what's frontage on that will be a little tricky because it's almost like a flag lot in some sense.
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, gentlemen, but it is 6 o'clock. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. I guess we'll start by mentioning that at this point in time, we do not have a quorum. So we will continue on with all of the parts of the meeting that are on the agenda, with the exception of anything where we would have to take action until such time that we have a quorum. And Councilor John Minor is on the phones. Of course, I'm here, and we are hoping that Councilor Rios Campos will be here soon. So we'll begin with our land acknowledgement statement. The Chinookan peoples, known as the Clackamas and Cascades, are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechockley was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and the fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Open the floor to citizen comment on non-agenda items. Greg, did anyone submit?
No, there are no requests for any kind of phone-in, teleconference, citizens' comments. There are no citizens here, and I would like to point out that presentation number 2 or item number 4, Gresham stand-up update, will need to be rescheduled due to their request.
Thank you, Greg. Next, we would have the public safety report with Sergeant Girkman. Good evening, Sergeant. Good, good.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. There were 317 calls for service over the last month in the city of Wood Village, which is substantially lower than the monthly average, which is about 384. Everything specific calls wise looked like it was a little bit below average. The one that was significantly less was traffic stops. Traffic stops, we were below half of what our monthly average is. I can only speculate as to why. It could be excessive overtime, bad weather, things like that can cause self-initiated activity to go down. But the traffic stops did decrease. Out of those 317 calls, 166 were dispatched and 151 were self-initiated activity. The dispatch calls for service is right along the monthly average. Like I said, self-initiated activity was fairly low. Out of the dispatch calls, 32 were emergency calls and 134 were non-emergency calls. Both those numbers are right at the monthly average for the city of Wood Village. Another increase we are seeing is stolen vehicles as well as recovered stolen vehicles within the city. We had 6 stolen vehicles, which is almost double the normal monthly rate, as well as the recoveries. We had 4 recoveries, which was a lot higher than what we normally have. I think I mentioned it last time. We usually see more stolen vehicles and more stolen vehicle recoveries in the colder months. usually there's less calls for service, giving deputies more time to be out on the road and finding those cars, as well as people taking them for shelter. And looked like that there were 11 reported crashes within the city. None of them had significant or life-threatening injuries, at least. And then I took a look through the call log. The one that caught my eye was back on the 16th at 238 in Halsey. It came out as a threat call. Kind of the way it reads, it was probably a likely mental health crisis. A gentleman was waving a pipe around and threatening people. Deputies responded and were able to take him into custody without any significant incident. And he was charged with disorderly conduct and harassment. But no other calls on the call log jumped out at me as significant.
Councilor Minor, do you have any questions or comments at all for Sergeant Glickman?
No questions from my end. Thank you, Sergeant, for the report.
Thank you.
Sergeant Glickman, looking through the call log, can you tell me what the incident abbreviation DISTP means?
Disturbance.
Disturbance. Okay. Is there a chance that we could get a glossary of those abbreviations and kind of a
Yeah,
sort of a parameters of what could be considered a disturbance?
absolutely. I could get you the exact BOAC because they're the ones, BOAC's the one that labels the call. So they would have an actual written definition. I could give you kind of an off the cuff definition is type of confrontation between two people, public or domestic, type of yelling, screaming, or even if it's a call where maybe someone's hearing two people yelling out in a parking lot or in a park, they'll label that as. But absolutely, I could get you a glossary of what those stand, what BOAC's exact definitions are.
That'd be cool. Well, I mean, full disclosure, the reason I asked is I'll report there was a disturbance then on my street.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I'll get those to you as soon as I can.
Then Mayor, I have two questions, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I believe it was earlier this month, Birch and Halsey, give or take, there's a kind of a gun-related incident.
Yes.
Are there any updates you can share with that?
So I'm not aware of any updates. I know that was kind of an odd call where I believe a round got fired into a house as well as some guns stolen out of a separate house. I'm not sure where the investigation's at this point.
Okay. And then the other one is hopefully more of a pleasant topic in that there tends to be the sheriff's office does an annual toy drive,
Yes.
working with Walmart and things. So first question is that occurring and when? And second, if there are families in need in the area, how do they kind of sign up to maybe get some of the toys or things, or
Right.
what's that process?
That's a great question. I have not been told that it is occurring again this year. I know last year, everything got put. I've not been told that we're doing it. I will get you a definitive answer on that. And then as far as people, it's through a private organization. Get in contact, but I could get you that information.
That'd be great, because we're doing a couple, holiday related meal box things. And so
Yeah.
we get some families asking about then toys and things too with that. So it'd be great to at least provide the information, whether you do it at the Walmart or if it's just a part of a larger kind of activity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
All right, Sergeant Glickman, thank you very much. We appreciate the report.
Thank you very much.
And next on the agenda then is our Metro Housing and Supportive Services Bond update with Metro Councilor Shirley Craddock. Councilor Craddock, I apologize that we don't have more of a council audience for you tonight, but we're certainly looking forward to what you have to say nonetheless.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity. You guys are always so gracious and allowing me to join you at your meetings. I thought you might be interested in some of the information, both about regarding Metro's affordable housing measure that was passed in 2018 and the supportive housing services major. But I thought I would lead with some census information, which I find, of course, interesting. This is regional, from the regional focus. And because I assume that you guys have been reviewed some of the census data specifically to your city. So if you don't mind, I'll start with the census information, then we'll move into the housing and the supportive housing information. So to start off, in 2020, our census is showing us that we have over 1.6 million people that live within the metro urban growth boundary. And I want to make sure that that's a UGB, but the actual Metro Council district is about another 7,000 people. And so this is a 12% increase from 2010. So we've had about 12% growth overall in the metro region in the last 10 years. There's, of course, a 39% of the metro region is about 39% of the Oregon's population, so close to 40%. And then, of course, as you probably aren't surprised, we've had a large increase in the BIPOC community over these last 10 years. Thank you for moving these. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you need me to move it, faster or slower, just let me know, Counselor.
Of course, I will. So I know if you're like me, you can't see this very well if you're looking at a little tiny screen. So the orange is the 2020 and the blue is the 2010. So this is showing, well, I guess it's easier for me to look at the numbers. So in 2010, Clackamas County grew 12%, Multnomah County 10%, almost 11%, and Washington County 13%. So most of the growth occurred on the west side of the region. The south part of the region was the least growth. If you can go back to that slide, please. And then Multnomah County was actually the least growth, but it's still being the largest county by population, is still growing more, I guess you could say, but the growth patterns are definitely changing. So now if you can go to the next slide, please. So if you look at by city, obviously it probably doesn't surprise you that Portland had the most population increase, but then that was followed by Hillsborough, the Bethany area, which is unincorporated part of Washington County, Happy Valley, and then Gresham, and then Beaverton follows that. And so then goes down to Wilsonville, Tigard, Oregon City, and Forest Grove. So this is where most the growth has occurred in the cities in this region. So now if you can go to the next slide. So when you remove Portland out of that, then the little orange bar is kind of showing you where most of that growth has occurred. Of course, Hillsborough is a big, large area where that, and then Bethany again. And I assume most of you know where Bethany is. It's just the unincorporated area just north of Hillsborough. So there's been a lot of growth there. So if you could go on to the next slide. And this is, of course, showing the changes that have occurred in our BIPOC community, where, again, Multnomah County has had, and both Washington County have had the growth of the BIPOC community is pretty significant, and of course, more so than in Clackamas County. Again, the orange is the BIPOC community. If you could go on to the next slide. And so we are trying to, determine, well, why is that? Obviously demographics are changing. We've had many people move here to the region over the last 10 years, but there's also been unprecedented effort to ensure people, to help BIPOC communities feel more comfortable, identify themselves in these census accounts. And then it's also improvements in the design of how the race ethnicity question and data processing gave some flexibility. People had the opportunity this year to choose to self-identify their race. And so that has influenced the changes in the data too. If you go on to the next, please. So, but some of the decisions that the Metro Council has made and Metro has made has also influenced these changes. And in a minute, I'll show you where the urban growth boundary annexations, expansions, and annexations that have occurred over these last 10 years. And then the growth rates for the different parts of the region. Of course, that has had some effect on where, some of the focus has been in development. And then, of course, just the demographic differences amongst the districts. So if you could go down to the next slide. And so this is the existing Metro Council districts. And of course, District 1 is this one on the east. I don't know, does my cursor show on your screen?
That's not, well, I'll,
So thank you. So District 1, of course, is on the east side of the region. District 4 is on the west side. And so you can see where there hasn't been as much growth on the east side of the region as there is on the west. So District 1, and so the average population for each district in 2020 will be 278,000 people. So we are looking at redistricting. We have, by law, we have to do that by our charter. And actually within just a few weeks, we will make that decision. So to balance our districts, District 1 will need to grow in geography. District 4 is going to need to shrink in geography because it has 18,000 people over the average population. District 1 is 23,000 less than the average population. And you can see District 2 there is almost right on the average to 185 difference. District 5 isn't that far off, nor is District 6. So, but then District 3 in the southwest part of the region has over 5,000 people that are above the average. So will happen is District 1, as I mentioned, will grow, District 4 will shrink. And then of course, by doing that, it's going to affect the other districts. So we now have, I think, 5 scenarios that we have identified to consider for redistricting. I encourage you to go to Metro's website and just Google the redistricting, and the maps will show up there. It's really fast. I find this information really interesting. And to see what some of those scenarios are. One of those is to put all of District 1 in Multnomah County, and the area just below Clackamas County that's currently in District 1 would then move to District 2. And that's just one of the 4 scenarios. So there's some, I think they're interesting, some of the maps that we've identified as ones to consider. If you can go on the next slide, please. So this slide is demonstrating some of the influences of why population is growing on the west side more than the east. And one of those is where the UGB expansions have occurred. And as you can see, there's the light blue is expansions that occurred in 2011. And that blue gradation, of course, the deeper the color, the deepest blue are the UGB expansions that occurred in 2018. And as you can see, there's been no expansions on the south part of the region other than, I guess, Wilson, or down by Wilsonville, and of course, none in the east. So one thing that's changed over the last 10 years is the decisions that both Metro and the 3 counties agreed upon is the decision around the urban growth or the urban rural reserves. And we identified this urban reserve around the region where we can grow in the future over the next 50 years. And then beyond that, there's a rural reserve that we are not allowed to move into in the next 50 years. But another change that had occurred in that decision was now the cities are the drivers and when a UGB expansion occurs. The cities have to request a UGB expansion, and they have to be prepared for that UGB expansion, and they have to be committed to that UGB expansion. And that if they're going to ask for this land to be added, that they are ready to move on the development process. That means do the comprehensive plans and the infrastructure and all that it takes to develop these UGB expansions. And so what's different between the east and the west side is there have been these cities have had need and want to grow, and they've asked for that. There's been no request on the east side. Now, just prior to all this discussion, one of the last UGB expansions was when Damascus was brought into the urban growth boundary. And that was a huge UGB expansion, the largest that we've ever done. And at the same time, we brought in Springwater. And neither of those there's been no development in either of those areas. And Springwater was in 2002, as I think Damascus was too. And as you can see, there's been no new development that has occurred. So it's very unlikely that any UGB expansion will occur in the east part of the region until those 2 areas have there's been more development. Now, meanwhile, Happy Valley is moving into the area that was formerly Damascus. They've completed their comprehensive plans, and they have plans to develop as far east as Foster Boulevard, where Foster becomes a north-south arterial. And so they have plans, and they have those plans developed, and there's a lot of development going on. If you've driven south on 191st, 190th, obviously you're going to see the changes that are occurring in that area. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So this is just again to show you the changes that have occurred in the population in a different way. The orange line is the average population in 2010. The 2020 is the blue line, and just see how the differences in the different districts has occurred, the different change and growth changes that have occurred. So if you go on to the next slide, please. And then this now is getting more showing the differences in the BIPOC. This is a population that's been self-identified as white alone or BIPOC, and just what occurred in 2010 versus what has occurred in 2020. And again, a big BIPOC population now that lives in the District 4 on the west side of the region. Next, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with the census. We'll move into the housing and the information, and then I'm glad to take any questions that you might have. So I assume that you're pretty knowledgeable by this time. The affordable housing measure was passed by the voters in 2018. And of course, here we are now in 2021. This is a general obligation bond, and this is to support investments in housing construction. And so we are moving that out, and I'm very proud. It's very successful, doing really well. And so that's what I want to show you, some of that information. Just prior to this, the Metro Council identified the policy framework that really shaped how these funds would be distributed and in what format. And then, of course, we have the oversight of that. And then just after the MOM measure was passed, each city that was receiving these funds and county had to come up with a local implementation plan before they received any of the funds. And so this is really contributing to this being a very successful program. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. So our goal is to build over 3,900 affordable homes. I'm saying over now. This is 3,900 is the original target, but we fully expect we're going to exceed that. The other goal in this is at least half of these homes are going to be family size, 2 bedrooms or more. And then at least 1,600 will be very affordable for people that earn less than 30% of the average median income. The affordable housing needs are really pretty needy in these large families. It's been very difficult over time for families to find affordable housing, with 2 or 3 or 4 children. And then, of course, it's really difficult for people that earn less 30% of the average median income or less to find housing, almost impossible. So go on to the next slide, please. So there are, the funding is being distributed to those cities and counties that already receive dollars from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So that was how the decision was made of how the funding gets distributed. So money is going to Clackamas County Housing Authority, to Washington County's Housing Authority. Portland's Housing Authority, as you know, is Home Forward. And so Portland is also receiving money directly from this measure because they're a city and they already receive HUD dollars. So the Housing Authority of Multnomah County, the funds that Home Forward is receiving is being focused on the area of Multnomah County that's outside of Portland and Gresham, but in the metro boundary. So these funds cannot be used out in Multnomah County outside of the metro boundary. And then the other cities that receive funding through HUD directly, of course, Gresham, Beaverton, and Hillsborough. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So again, I apologize if you're looking at a tiny little screen like I am. So we're really pleased with the progress. It's really remarkable. So the blue line are the this is the construction, these are units. The blue line is what's in pre-construction. The yellow line, or however you want, a gold line, whatever you want to color, is what's under construction. And then the tiny little green line is what's completed. And then the blue line are the funds that are remaining to be built, or in this case, the units that are remaining to be built. And then if you go down here, as far as the total bond measure, we have this, the blue line is depicting how much of the funds are in pre-construction, how much is under construction, and then the dark blue is the funds that are remaining. And so there's this little tiny green line in between that actually shows the number of units that are actually completed. And as you know, I'm sure you're very familiar and aware of this, and this was passed in 18, we're in 2021. So it takes time to develop the plans, get all the partnerships lined up, go through the permitting process. So they have to go through all the same challenges that any other developer has to go through before they can actually start construction. So there's quite a lead time before actual construction can occur. But things are really picking up. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So pleased to announce, you probably read this already and are aware of this, that the first completed project is in Rockwood. And this is a partnership between Hacienda CDC and the city of Gresham. Most of these housing units are going to be built with the public-private partnerships. It's really a great way to pair up these funds. And so this is the first project that's underway, and just really proud. This is interesting facility because it's multiple buildings. And so I think it's only the first building that is open. Excuse me, I want to go to my statistics here. So Hacienda, of course, is a culturally specific developer. They expect to be 224 units here. There's 5 buildings, and the first building just opened. 10 of the Metro Bond units are now homes for families. So again, these are large units that are for families with multiple children. And then Metro's funding is also helping with 47 units for deeply affordable units. So these are for households that earn less than 30% of the average median income. So I was really proud of this. The other unique thing I think is, it hasn't been discrete so much, is this is the first time that affordable housing is being built throughout the entire region. And that's the value of this bond measure, is that the other agencies now are stepping up. These other cities and counties are stepping up to build affordable housing. And as you probably know, so much of the affordable housing in the past has been built in the east side of the region. And so because traditionally it's more affordable. And the challenge with that is that then that also tends to concentrate poverty. And so this affordable housing measure is distributing the housing throughout the entire region. And it's allowing people to live and work where they choose to live, or where they work. And so it really is a remarkable program. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So I'm now going to go on to the supportive housing measure. And this is was just passed in 2020. We're in 2021 now. So we are just, last May, it was 1 year since the voters approved this. Funding began to be moving out just this last July. So we're in the very beginning stages of this. And this is a tax that is a 1% tax on personal income that's taxable above $125,000 a year. So if someone earns more than $125,000 a year, there's a 1% tax. And then for individuals, but then families that earn over $200,000 a year, that file jointly, then that 1% tax is occurring on their income. But then in addition to that, it's a 1% business income tax on net income for businesses with receipts over $5 million a year. So that this is a different form of tax than we're using, of course, for the housing bond. But this is to help pick up what a construction bond can't do. And so it's this housing assistance and those wraparound services. So the best way I have found to describe this is that and I'm sure you may already know this, is that all people that live in affordable housing that is publicly subsidized pay rent. That rent is prorated according to their means. But the challenge is that people that earn less than 30% of the average median income, it really is difficult to be able to find units that are affordable enough that they can help pay for the rent and be able to live there. It's just this huge amount of public subsidy that needs to occur to find housing for people with less than 30% of the average median income. So this is a funding that is going to bridge that gap. And its goal is to end chronic homelessness. And so the goal over the time of the initiative is to place over 5,000 people in housing. And it is the largest local investment in our country. Any region has ever committed to help people that need housing to find it, to have access to housing. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. So some key measures of success. We've already moved out about $180 million into the program. The goal is to place 5,000 people over the 10 years of the program, and then households, 10,000 people that are experiencing some kind of homelessness throughout that time period. Oftentimes, the funding can just help people be from eviction. They might be in housing temporarily, but they don't have enough income to hold them over, they lose their job or have an injury or something, can't work. It's to help people that are in housing stay in housing also. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. So just kind of how some of this housing, these funds will be used for transition and placement, to help people attain financial literacy, somewhat help with job training, employment, and help people stay in school, street outreach, peer support, fair housing advocacy, landlord, tenant education, legal services, shelter services, eviction, prevention, like I just mentioned. And then, of course, the big one is the intervention in helping people with either addictions like alcohol or drugs, or people with mental health needs, to help them get help for those needs, and to allow them to help them be functional and to be able to stay in housing. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. So these are specific to Multnomah County. Each county is slightly different. They have a different implementation plan. So these are, of course, big supportive housing, goal is more supportive housing expansion, expanding their behavioral health support systems, shelter expansion, and then working with community-based organizations, help them with their capacity, because these CBOs are such a big, important in this whole process, in their partnership, and then overcome the challenges that the pandemic has created in all of this.
Shirley, can I ask a question here?
Yes,
Yeah. Back to that the previous slide, please. What is that street safety and shelter expansion? How is that being implemented? And is that being coordinated with the city of Portland in trying to get the people off the street and in a safer locations that are more permanent, where there is that wraparound help that we know they need? How are we moving on that? Because I sometimes have, I'm involved in this, so I know some of the challenges, but where are we actually doing some of this shelter expansion? Where is it happening? And how many people are we really helping get off the streets?
Well, and one thing we got to step back here on the role that Metro has in this. So this is a partnership between Metro and the 3 counties. And so Metro's responsibility, of course, is the funding agency. We are also the oversight, and one thing that'll be coming out of this is a tri-county consortium that we've never had before. So this funding started flowing just this July, and we now are in November. So we are in the very early stages of this, and this counties are the ones that are, I guess I'll say, just suggest is I would encourage your city council to invite Home Forward, or excuse, I'm sorry, not Home Forward, the organization that, what is the organization called that Portland and Multnomah County work together?
Joint office.
Joint Office of Homeless Services, thank you. I would invite them to come to one of your meetings and report that out, because I don't know, I don't have that information.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think it would be very important that you ask. The reason is, we are still have some negotiations occurring between Metro and the 3 counties. And that is that intergovernmental agreement, that IGA. And we have a ways to go before that is agreed upon. And so Metro is pushing to have oversight, and we want a database established that helps us have data that you can have access to see the successes or the challenges that we're facing in all of this. I'll be one of the first of its kind. There's some pushback on that. Of course, as you probably would guess, the counties want less oversight and Metro wants more oversight. So we have a ways to go before that IGA is settled. We have an interim IGA right now, but our attorneys are still working together on the outcome of this. And so once that's settled, and I hope one of the outcomes of that will be this developing this database that will really allow you then to have information, specific information onto the successes that are being achieved, but also to be able to see the challenges that we still face. So I would love your help, because we need the cities to be asking and for accountability on this. Just tell us what's happening, because one thing that I've been advocating for is, well, first of all, this database, but the only way the public at this point is going to be able to know what successes we're achieving is they're going to want to see fewer people living on the street. That's the only way we have available to measure that right now. And I would guess if I started walking down the street and asking people, well, how do you think we're doing on this investment? And I would imagine there wouldn't be many favorable comments, because right now it doesn't look like a lot has happened.
No, and that's true. And I think any of us would have to agree with that. I certainly haven't. I hear plans and I hear, what's going to happen, but I just don't see much happening right now to help people get off the streets and get into some safe, even if it's transitional. But we ought to be doing something. There's enough money out here to make a change with this. So anyway,
For sure.
Shirley, thank you. You've answered the part of my question there, and that is the county. The money is waiting. If I hear right, the money is available. So of course the IGAs have to get reconciled, but the money is there and ready to put it to use.
The money is rolling out. As you know, in any tax system, this is different than a bond measure. So the money comes in each year. And so this first year, we only had 6, but that was passed in the measure was in 2021. So we only had 6 months to collect taxes. So that there still isn't a lot into the pipeline yet. So next year, that will be picking up over time on the amount of revenue that will be collected. So we're still in the very early stages, but I appreciate your question, because it's really important that we ask those questions and hold us all accountable, Metro and the 3 counties for sure. So these are Multnomah County's goals, that this is what they've put in their implementation plan and what they're going to want to achieve. So over time, I think that's where they want to be. So if you could go on to the next slide, maybe at the, oh, okay. So the purpose of this slide is just demonstrating how the 2 measures work together. So one of the major challenges right now and in homelessness is there's no place for people to live. And I know there's a lot of frustration out there where people are on the street, and I think you already know that we aren't really able to move people around camps and so on until we have a place for them to live. And so that's the value of the affordable housing measure paired with the supportive housing measure. Is the affordable housing measure is physically building buildings where people can live. The supportive housing measure is that supplement that's needed to help people be able to pay for their rent and also access services that they might need to be able to stay in housing. Many homeless people that are, have challenges with mental health or addictions, it's really difficult for them to move from the street to housing often because it means behavior change. And, you don't drink and you can't use your drugs when you're living in housing. So this is a huge change. And just think of all of us that have had different habits that we want to change in our life, how difficult that is. And so that's why it's just so difficult for people that are moving from the street to housing to help them long-term stay in housing, because they might live there for a while, but then they're through recidivism, they often end up back on the street. So if you could go back on to the next slide, please. And so this is just the links of where you can find more information, and I'm sure that's readily available. And I'm sure if you need any help, we'll be glad to help you find access to this information. So go ahead and close this down if you please. And so that's it. I thought you might be interested in some of this data, and appreciate your interest and allowing me to be here and join you this evening. And see if do you have any question or comment? Did we lose the mayor? I don't see him here.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I just had one question, and you might not have the answer because, that second or the third to last slide, it was the Multnomah County's commission's plans. But do you know what their what sector they were going to explore when they work on the pay equity?
I don't. Yeah, that's the details that I don't have. I would invite Commissioner Stegman to come in. I would invite Mark Jolin to come in and join you. I think they can give you a lot of specifics about the details of this that me and Metro wouldn't have. So I think those would be excellent questions to ask.
And if I could touch really quickly on efforts to connect with the joint office, several of us in the Forest City area have been trying to get a pipeline into understanding the joint office's processes, how to get a voice in the processes, or just even hear what the progress is. Luckily, just this week, through Commissioner Stegman's office and her people, we don't necessarily have a voice yet at the joint office, but we'll at least be getting some regular updates on what's going on over there. And then hopefully over the course of the next little while, get some sort of voice or input mechanism into shaping some of these things. So it's something we've been aware of and trying to grapple with. It's just been kind of, from the Forest City's perspective, kind of a vacuum of not knowing even who to go to get information on the joint office. And it's probably because they're trying to figure out their mechanisms as well.
Well, that's good to hear, Greg, that the four cities are working on just precisely that. And I appreciate hearing that.
No, I appreciate that one, because that's kind of help that Metro also needs is it's really important to me. Of course, I'll be leaving office at the end of next year, but I would love to be able to say in 10 years, look what we've accomplished. And we really depend on the counties to really make this initiative work. The public's, we agreed when we sent it to the voters that we would put a sunset on it. And so that is 10 years from now. And so the only way we're going to get the public support to renew this in 10 years is that they've got to see progress. And I sure hope that we can look back in 10 years and say, wow, this is really has made a big difference in our region.
Councilor Craddock, is there a specific sort of data collection or data set that Metro might be looking for that we could encourage the county to consider collecting?
Oh, we've got to first get their agreement that they would be willing to collect data. we haven't gotten there yet. And so then from that point, I determine what kind of data it is to be collected. This is a whole new world. And this could be, frankly, my background is I worked 33 years doing clinical research. And so I have a really value what data can do, the story it can tell. And not only tell a story, but it will show us patterns. And it can really influence how we go about working with people with addictions and homelessness in the future. So to me, this is absolutely critical that we have a database that's robust and accurate and something that the public and we could really use to help influence how we make decisions in the future.
Mayor and just everybody, I'm surprised to hear that at this point in our homelessness and our efforts to help people get off the street, we don't have data, if I'm hearing correctly, on
Well, I wouldn't say that.
How to spend the money, if it's an addiction issue, how we spend the money there. If it's just if we need some transitional housing, so I hope we have some data.
Let me not mislead you. The counties that do collect some kind of data, I don't know what that is, how they collect it. But part of it is that the 3 counties are using the same systems, so we can look across the region as 3 different counties. So I know there's data collected. I don't know what kind, how it's collected, what is the quality control, all those things that it takes to really have a good database. So I hope that this measure will help us create that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Craddock, and we'll keep you apprised of our progress on getting potential presentations from the joint office or let you know how well the new 4-city meeting potential is going.
I'm really glad you're working together. Wow, that's so powerful. So thank you for leading that and developing these partnerships. That really makes a difference in helping influence decisions. So thank you. And thank you so much for allowing me to join you this evening.
Yeah, and thanks for your report, Councilor.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
of course. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night.
So as Greg mentioned earlier, agenda item number 4 unfortunately had to be postponed for now. We are looking at potential January agenda items to get back together with Gresham Stand Up. Number 5 is a review of bills paid. Councilor Minor, do you have any questions about the bills paid?
No, I do not.
Okay, and then Greg, so obviously consent calendar is where we usually make a decision. Is it going to slow anybody down on being able to renew their liquor license?
I would say probably not. So the way that OLCC liquor license are done is generally if there's an objection, that's what can, OLCC will take that into consideration. In talking with the sheriff's office, we do this as part of the annual review. Are there any current license holders that have any kind of alcohol-related incidents or, abuses? There aren't any concerns from the sheriff's office, so it's always nice to take action on this before the renewal period. There's also essentially no harm if not, because the renewal's not a new license that needs the affirmative approval of the council.
Excellent.
But we still will bring it back in December.
December, sure. All right. And then we'll, so apologize, I can't remember initially. There is no council action on the personnel policy update, right?
Correct. It's just
Okay.
a discussion to
All right.
introduce some of the ideas, concepts, get feedback. The ideas, we'll bring it back for resolution at the December meeting. We can also put that, we can go through it with the 2 of you that are present tonight and, push it a little bit if you want, but I'm very happy to kind of go through the suggested revisions if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg.
There we go. Sometimes I hate Zoom. All right, there we go. So no PowerPoint on this. This is actually, we're just going to walk through the red line changes that were in your council packet and talk a little bit more about the hows and whys. Some of them were based on legislative changes out of the last session. Some of them were kind of just more operational things kind of change. Others were, one of them was council directed from several months ago, and the remaining ones are things that kind of staff or myself suggested. So first one under section 110, work hours and attendance, really just updating the telecommuting policy, calling it work from home. I mean, telecommuting is a little archaic, and it doesn't necessarily change the expectation that a work from home is not the norm, but it's also not completely unusual as it had been, especially pre-COVID, where it didn't really exist at all. Now we have, members have work from home computers. We have a cloud-based phone system with an app that an employee could be at their home, and calls they make or receive look like they're coming right from their desk. So it's a lot more streamlined and seamless. And there's been some mutually beneficial times to use work from home kind of at an ad hoc basis. For example, some of our team members have had some medical things where they could, go to, they have some appointments, but in between appointments, they can do some work from home, or they're not quite well enough to come to work, but are well enough to kind of sit at home in their PJs or relaxy clothes and, respond to emails, phone calls, and kind of process stuff. Certainly they can't do things that in person would necessitate, but they can still do a lot of the day-to-day electronic means. And we've had some really good luck with that. And so that's where we've updated the policies that essentially they need to make sure that they have access to their work computer and, downloaded the phone app to make and receive calls. The other change here, number 3, is kind of, the supervisor would have to receive, a written log, whether, emailed or faxed. And that's kind of how old that one was. We're treating this as no different than any other, whether they're in the office or not. The director is responsible to making sure that outcomes are received on any kind of period of time. And that's what just reflecting that just because of work from home, we don't need a log of every hour. Were expectations met? Did we get desired outcomes? Are there issues because they've been working from home and productivity's declined? Or in some cases, actually, it's been quite seamless, our current experience. Questions on this first section?
Questions at all, Councilor Meyer?
Not here.
Next one under holidays. So the first change, all the other holidays actually had the day kind of listed. That was it. So that was a pretty benign one. The next one though is Juneteenth for June 19th. That was something discussed at your June, I believe it was 22nd council meeting. It was recognized that Juneteenth is a federal and state holiday. The councilors present at that meeting stated that if it's a federal holiday, state holiday, it ought to be a city holiday, celebrated for what it is. And acknowledged for that. So that was included here in this update. Also at that meeting, the idea of Christmas Eve was floated around by the council, mainly because staff will often ask for either a half day or a full day, depending on where Christmas Eve falls in the calendar of things. Didn't make that overtly here because again, when management team and staff kind of talked about it, there's some benefits to having it be a little more flexible. For example, when Christmas is on a Saturday, Christmas Eve is already automatically given. If Christmas Eve were then a holiday, we'd be getting Thursday, Friday off as well. Certainly, if council desires to grant Christmas Eve as a paid holiday, I don't think anyone will object. But we didn't really want to call that one out and wanted to open that up to the grand discussion we can have with everyone here tonight.
I don't have questions about either one of these.
Reagan, council has, at least in my memory, serving since 2011, has never said no when we're asked.
When there's been a request for either half day or full day, it's never been denied.
Yeah. And when that request is made, maybe I'm wrong, but I suppose we assumed that it was paid time.
Correct.
And so, John, obviously we aren't a quorum, so you and I couldn't necessarily come to a decision tonight. But I wanted to remind everyone that we've never said no. And so when we're together again as a full council, it might be something that we would want to consider. It'd be just to add Christmas Eve on a permanent basis.
And if you two want to say add it for consideration at the adoption next month, I'm happy to add it for then the whole entire council president at that meeting can take action on that if you'd like.
Would you be fine with that, Counselor Minor?
Yeah, and even little, maybe it's the same, but I'm real comfortable with administration making that decision. And they don't have to seek approval on that Christmas Eve. If there's a, make the call. Is how I feel about it. So I think I'm saying the same thing, or do you just want to say it's just going to be made? Greg, what works for you?
It certainly could be one of those where is a specially treated holiday day that if the day would be off because of Christmas, it's not a holiday day. Otherwise, it is a holiday day. If that's what you want to do, you could also just grant it as a automatic half day if that's a little more palatable. Again, unless Christmas already precedes the actual holiday day, like I said, with that Saturday example. Really, I thought it was just very generous granting Juneteenth and acknowledging the significance of that date. Felt a little greedy to put in another one, just to be frank and honest.
Well, I want you to have flexibility. All right, I want you to do what makes sense on when Christmas Eve.
I mean, generally, like I said, the longest day we work is a half day at most.
Yeah, but I'd rather leave it in your hands rather than have people just expect it. But for me, I'd rather just leave it in your hands. But I don't have a.
Because the other thing that, we can't really do as a public entity, we can't grant bonuses, kind of those random bonuses and other acknowledgements. This is also kind of a gift from the council every year that it's not expected. But it's one of those just nice that
I like
choose to do.
I like to have those things. I mean, when I did, I'd like to have things in my back pocket that I can grant and award and recognize and have a few words to say when you make the announcement.
I think you're right on both occasions. It is kind of cool to have those things, and that it is also ultimately Greg's decision. But I think the reason that I would want to suggest that we just make it permanent is that I don't think people take it for granted. And, they probably have in their mind that they're anticipating that there could be a time where we were to say no. And so, that's hanging over them while they're trying to make holiday plans. And I think that, we've never said no. And so we ought to offer the certainty and surety to people just to let them know that that's a day that they can plan to have off.
I'm very happy to put it in as a draft, and the rest of the council's here at the next meeting, bring it up for a little discussion again, and go from there. Next one is a kind of an unpleasant area, bereavement leave. It's never anything pleasant for the person that needs to take this leave. So one thing that we've kind of noticed and tracked is while 3 days seems to be a standard, there's also been a trend to increase it to more days than that, to acknowledge there's grief behind it. So it's not just going out for a funeral and then coming back like nothing happened. There's a bit of grief. The other things under definition, it was very, it said, spouse. And again, things are a little more fluid now. There's people who choose not to get married, but aren't in any less of established or significant relationship. So we changed the word from spouse to established significant other. One could say that could be a little loosey-goosey, kind of flavor of the month. That's not exactly what we're talking about. And staff generally knows, director levels, myself, as we get to know our team members, who's in what kind of relationship with whom, and whether they're married or just very committed unmarried couples. There's also, some same-sex couples or other couples who, for a variety of reasons, get married or whatnot, but again, doesn't mean they're not committed to themselves or their families. The other one that was added, and I'll admit was a bit, it's personal experience, suffering, miscarriages, and baby times are usually pretty happy, and going to an appointment where you think you're going to have one outcome and different one coming back to work is not necessarily where you want to be. And, you know, I wasn't the one carrying the child, certainly. So my experience was different than my wife's. And while I'm confident if I needed the time off, it would have been granted, no problem. There's also others who in the future may, if it's not explicitly stated, may have difficulty asking for it or seeking information on it. So I wanted to explicitly put that there is a loss with miscarriages or stillborn children. Questions, thoughts, concerns on that?
I don't have any concerns here.
No, you know, if anything, I'd, you know, make or additional leave may be granted by the city manager upon request, bold or in all caps, because, you know, can't really tell people how to grieve or necessarily how long it takes. I mean, obviously we have to keep the productivity of the city in mind. You know, it's, can't just tell people to get over it.
And that's generally a person will take a day off that first notice of the incident and then another day or two, some weeks later for the actual funeral, but there's not time for any kind of grief. And that's where 5 probably still not enough, but it's a little more, it gives them a little bit more space and breathing room. We
Yeah,
ask ourselves with serving the community. It's nice, again, acknowledging that we're not robots and we have needs too from time.
I certainly can support 5 days. And then they also have other leaves if they would need them, I think, Greg, don't we?
Correct. I mean, they could, you know, use any kind of accrued comp time, vacation time, depending on what they're actually seeking, potentially even medical leave if they need time for counseling or some other things.
I don't have any problem with this.
I mean, generally people who tend to abuse leaves, you know, that's dealt with differently. You know, I can't recall anyone, oh no, another great uncle passed away this weekend, you know, in Mexico or some tropical location. It's, I mean, in my experience here, it's been generally there's a lead up to it, you know, so-and-so's not feeling well or sick. Sometimes it's unfortunately very sudden and tragic. Next one, sorry about this one, how it's a little wonky due to the formatting piece there. So I'm going to try to zoom. This is a new one, and it's a little out there, a little different, especially for a public entity. But we have currently a service recognition provision where it's essentially a cash acknowledgement at every 5-year interval. Helps promote longevity, recognize those who have been with us for a while. I got this idea a couple years ago, and I can't remember what the nexus was, but in general, you don't necessarily get your best ideas or an inspiration from sitting in your workstation, in your office. You almost get them when you're doing another different activity, experiencing something new or different, and you have an aha moment, something like, ooh, that would be neat to bring back to the organization, or how could we bring this to the organization? Also at, you know, 10-year intervals, I mean, at least for the organization, that's a pretty big milestone. Not a lot of people get to 10. We get a lot of, you know, 5 to 8s, 5 to 7s. And so it can be a reward thing, but at every 10-year interval, the person gets a 2-week kind of paid sabbatical for both rest and recuperation to get away, because some people can work your 10 years and not actually get 2 weeks off in a row. They tend to just kind of either a week at a time or piecemeal some days here and days there. But also then reflect in the ways in which they serve the community and how we could do that, what their next steps are within the organization or in serving the community. Kind of one of those milestone moments at 10 years. Some people may be thinking about moving on to something different, or they may be thinking about different ways they can serve in their current position. So it's a new benefit, a new add. If adopted, there'd be one person right now that could take advantage of it. The next one is not for about 3.5-ish more years. So it's not one that would get used often, but one that could, again, promote and reward and recognize longevity and hopefully rejuvenate and revitalize and create new ideas.
Greg, if I hear you right, this is one you are proposing. The union did not come to the table.
No, this was my, came from my brain for good or for not.
My thoughts on this, I made a few notes. I am not, I'm always supportive of being, recognizing people's work and encouraging those folks that go above and beyond, and we do that in the city, and the city has been doing that for some time. I'm just a little soft on this at this point. I'll just tell you that. And I know we're not making any decisions tonight. I'm not soft on it because I think it's going to be expensive. I'm supportive of sabbaticals without any question. But I think it has to be, I'm just a little bit soft on the idea that they need a break. They need some downtime. People do, I get that. That happens. But if we're paying for it, and we are paying for it already and through vacation pay too. I mean, so they do have time, and if they choose to use it, a couple days a year, that's up to them. I think right now, I believe there needs to be some kind of it may be it doesn't have to be real hard language, but that it is. If they need time to think and maybe spend some time, obviously, with training, researching, maybe just some and take a short course in education, whatever it might be. So anyway, those are my thoughts right now.
So it sounds like to add a little more about the, lack of better words, academic sense of what they'd be doing and bringing back during this period. Is that kind of summarizing well enough?
Well, it is, and it doesn't have to be academic though.
No, I mean, that was just the word. I mean, there needs to be something that they're doing that they bring back.
Yeah, something that, and it may be just they've gone out and have done some research on what other cities are doing. I mean, I don't want to try to make up every opportunity, every situation here, but I think we have to, myself, tie this back to the city in some fashion.
Thoughts, comments?
I like the gift program. Clearly I volunteer in the public sector. I work in the private sector, and actually my employer starts with your first anniversary $100 gift card, and it goes up $100 for every year that you're with the company. And I wouldn't mind being like try to find a way to fit like maybe bump the 5-year, 10-year, so forth and so on up half a point, and be able to have like a 1% a year until 5 years. 5 years you go to this level and you stay at that level until 10 years.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, what these percents mean is the 5-year one's roughly $6-ish, I think, 88. It's the median wage on our entire wage scale, which is about $88. So that's your gift at 5 years, is an $88 value, and then it adds that amount every 5 years.
In my notes here, I was sorting that out. I don't mind spending some money here to retain. I see this as a retention aspect of our personnel policy, and I'm all about retaining people. So I made some notes here about maybe it's a bonus, another, and add it to the percentages as the mayor is saying. I want us to retain people. we currently have a sabbatical. If a person requested a sabbatical, Greg, whether it's, I don't know if it's in our language or not, is it?
Well, I mean, we have vacation and then we have basically extended leaves of absences, whether paid or unpaid. Generally, those aren't used. Usually extended leaves or absence are due to some sort of medical related incident, whether it's personal, taking care of family members. Most often or not, getting 2 weeks is the one we'll get at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's, if you want sabbatical language, then I'm really supportive of sabbatical, that a person is going to go out and pursue an additional training. And back to my original conversation here about sabbaticals. So I'd rather see us retain people, and if the bonus, I think a bonus is a more attractive retention than somebody working 10 years so they can take, to have 2 weeks additional in addition to their vacation. But certainly in this language too, Greg, the piece I would not support is that the 2-week paid sabbatical shall be granted. I wouldn't use the word shall, even if we're going to do it. That has to be a may be granted.
So I think what we'll do is, I mean, management's here listening to your feedback. We'll kind of think of some options, bring back maybe a couple of things at the December meeting for then more people to kind of weigh in on. And, if that needs additional discussion, we could pull that from the resolution and, adopt it a little bit later. But we can certainly kind of workshop this around in terms of looking at the bonus provisions and, the frequency and amounts, as well as the language around some sort of time away at some kind of interval potentially. How does that sound to both of you?
Sure. No, because I think we need further discussion. That's one point where Councilor Minor and I might differ, is that I wanted to change the word shall as well, but I wanted to change it to will. And so clearly, we still have some discussion and decision making to do. I like the idea of it because, it says, to reward, to rejuvenate, to provide the employee with an opportunity to reflect. I think the word sabbatical kind of, like Councilor Minor is saying, has some expectation associated with it. In academia, it's usually not 2 weeks. It might be like a year.
Right, because you're on some sort of other research project.
And so 2 weeks, actually a pretty short period of time. But sabbatical does put some pressure on the person to think that they have to, produce something. They have to bring back,
Something,
some learning,
idea, or
if for no other, thing than, just, the value of rejuvenation and what it could mean for the organization in terms of their own productivity. I think that, we talk about not binding future councils. And, here we might be talking about rewarding future staffs that might not be as deserving of the awarding as the current staff is.
I'd like to think that if that were the case, they wouldn't be last 10 years.
Yeah.
There are other means to address that.
One would hope not. But I can't say that there is a person here that I wouldn't want to see here in, at the end of their 10 years of their tenure.
We'll workshop this internally a little bit and maybe bring back a couple of different options or some mix and match things for again, hopefully a more full council robust discussion. So the next one, really took this one apart. This language was around since before I was on board here, just kind of updated and things. It's very how do I put this? Not in keeping with certainly current standards of what it means to be an office worker or even a public employee. You know, through COVID, you know, we had our casual Fridays, and then through COVID, when we didn't really have many walk-in customers or guests, we started doing a little more daily casual appearance, and, you know, the teams resonate with that. And so this one is a combination of a state law change as well as some operational changes that we just kind of kept through COVID. And that's dress and appearance. I forget the Senate or the actual legislative bill measure, but hairstyles are protected now. Different, you know, whether it's just the style, the color, because of different cultural values on that. And so we incorporated a language that basically want to honor and respect an employee's right to reflect their best selves, their culture, their heritage, their deeply held values and beliefs, as well as what makes them feel productive and, you know, good, while bookending it. And that's where it kind of says, you know, you can dress a little more relaxed or informal, but that doesn't mean you're going to wear your pajamas or what you'd wear to the gym or lounging at home. But certainly things like jeans and on top could be acceptable. We then also kept some exceptions, certainly safety sensitive jobs, tasks, or positions where reflective gear, steel-toed boots, all that good stuff is a requirement. Anything that may lessen the public confidence in us. So, I mean, again, there's some bookends on that. And then we added public meetings, conferences, or events where a formal business attire is warranted or accepted. I won't tell you which one of us or ones of us in the meeting may have casual attire in their little closet and then dress before meetings, but it does happen. And I'm as a manager, I'm fine with that. I think that's great. If a person can come into work dressed in a way that they can be really productive, and then if they need to change because of a meeting or another event, I think that's perfectly appropriate. Back up a little bit, you can or ask questions on it. And try to incorporate the state law that, you know, whether dress or appearance or stuff, represent yourself.
Greg, this was another one I spent a little time thinking about. Between now and our next meeting, here again, or some of my thought here, and you can get counsel on this to make sure that, you know, we would be able to enforce what would be truly inappropriate. And so that would be the first thing. I think it's pretty vague, but I think it's good language responding to what the state is requiring at this point. But this is one that I think is open to interpretation. And I would, you know, deeply held, you know, we've been through this in the public sector in schools. And, you know, if give me an example might be if somebody's working the front desk and they're a deeply held belief, maybe a hate group, it may be some subversive organization, and they insist on wearing the t-shirt or wearing a badge or a hat that begins to promote that. It will be interesting to see what Jeff might have to say about how would we address that, because I don't think there are certain things that that probably most of us could agree would probably lessen public confidence in the city, but would also be a deeply held belief that an employee may have. So that's my question about this one. So
There's, I didn't mention it specifically, but there is the caveat also that it cannot make other employees uncomfortable or conflict with other personnel rules, guidelines, or provisions, which do have in other parts of our personnel manual talk about respectful behaviors, actions, et cetera. And so if their deeply held belief was, call it a racial hate group, that still wouldn't be accepted because of other provisions of our personnel policy. We wouldn't say you
Right.
still can't believe that, but you can't promote that in
Yeah.
your dress and appearance.
All right, I see that language there. I didn't see that in what I was looking at. But anyway, that was my concern on this one. I'm all for, allowing some comfort. I was not one as a principal that supported a gym teacher wearing gym shorts all day long, and they also teach 3 health classes. So I think dress is important, but it has changed, and we need to be consistent with certainly state law. I'm not uncomfortable with relaxed clothing.
We're a city where if we go by the tone that the council sets, would be able to wear jeans every day, t-shirts if they wanted to. The only thing I would say about jeans is that you can spend $500 on a pair where when you wear them, it looks like you survived a shark attack. And, we might want to, talk about, a style that, sort of the maximum amount of possible denim. But other than that,
How much skin do you show with your jeans on?
And again, because we're writing this for also future staff and team members, I say current ones, there are no issues. Everyone seems to know what's very appropriate for a business casual, a little more informal attire is. There are still a number of people who wear, slacks, blouses, skirts, that, the traditional sense. There are others who then, jeans and, like I said, kind of a more fun top, or generally there haven't had to be any discussions about what is or isn't appropriate. I guess there was one instance, it wasn't overt or too terrible. It was just, we had that conversation about, how does you wearing this, how others can view that and reflect the service and the values, and got it right away. And it wasn't even an issue.
Yeah.
Staff kind of called out and said, you might want to think about that.
having a approved list of band t-shirts, concert t-shirts that people can wear.
I just wanted to say, I think that that a lot of this isn't necessarily that we want to relax the standard. It's just it's hard when you have a restrictive rule and then you have a conversation with an employee that says, well, you can't do that because it's in the personnel handbook. And that's kind of the default. It's kind of a rule following. The ability to have a conversation with, like, a two-way conversation with your employee, I think is where the management team currently is at. And I think that's where the council would also kind of feel comfortable is, I have had to have conversation, not here, but in other jobs where it's kind of the conversation is, you're complaining that people aren't treating you professionally, consider how you look.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to be treated professionally, you need to look at kind of the Geek Squad guys who might not know anything, but they look like they know what they're doing. And so kind of you might not like it, I might not like it, but you need to consider how others perceive you and how that affects your career. And that's a much better conversation to have. And at least even if they don't agree with you, to at least find out where they're at rather than saying, this is the rule, follow it. And so I think that that's kind of goes along with the change in management philosophy, and the one that Greg currently embodies, of having conversations and trying to engage with your employees and find out where they're at, rather than just saying, well, that's the rule and you got to follow the rule.
Well, and, I've lived in Wood Village since 2005, and outside of the possible, the occasional missionary, I can't, I wouldn't have to take both shoes off to count the number of people I've seen walking down the street in a coat and tie. And so I think there's also something to be said for, not being intimidating potentially, when when the public is coming in, having them be comfortable with, with their attire when they come to address us or when they come to the Help and Information Center. I also think that, even as adults, we sort of succumb to peer pressure. And so if there's, a certain standard set, for the most part by senior staff, that's going to let other people know kind of what they have permission to do and what the boundaries are. I'm fine with all the changes.
I'm good.
And so then the very last one, about inclement weather is essentially saying that work from home is also an option during inclement weather events, as long as they comply with the work from home provisions as stated in the other policy. Prior to this, it was basically either come into work in the snow or ice, or you got to take, personal time off. There's now a third option that we've institutionalized, and unless City Hall is closed, and that's the mayor or designee has that authority, there will be a couple people here, if nothing else. That was the case the last few snow ice events. Wasn't a lot of line staff per se, but generally there aren't a lot of phone calls or service needs during big snow and ice events other than maintaining our utility infrastructure and clearing roadways. But there's still people here to help.
And it's not just the employee waking, well, I don't want to drive to work today. It's working with their director and community, their supervisor.
No, I think that there's definitely a higher expectation by the public of city employees, to be better at driving in the snow than they are, despite the fact that we live here too and don't see it any more often than they do. I think that when you witness some of the storms we've had in the past, just in the past couple of years, there was a point in time where it was, nearly impossible to drive. You'd have to dig yourself out. But our staff, for the most part, was still on the job. I'm of a mind that we serve the people well, but risking your own life and safety isn't part of the job. Just have to take into account, where it is people live and the sort of terrain that they're going to have to first to get here. And I think that the code already has the right sideboards on it in terms of what sort of time they can use, and saying that they have to use that time, unless of course they are able to adequately work from home.
It could be if there's a big ice event, there may not be power for them to
Power
work from home.
or power to work here, for that matter.
And that's also a possibility.
Yeah.
And 'cause
I don't
there
have
was-
any problems with this language.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine.
there was one instance 4 or 5 years, probably 5 years ago now, City Hall was forced to close because no one could make it in.
Sure.
But generally, I would say as a city manager, it's the thing I hate most, and that's looking at the weather and, mayor, do we close, do we not? Because on the one hand, we have such dedicated people, they will try whatever they can to come here to serve the people. On the other hand, as a public entity, again, there's that expectation of continued services regardless of environmental factors. And so when the newscaster and the, ODOT and other agencies are saying, stay home if you can, and on the other hand, it's like, well, come on into City Hall. It's tough. And I think this strikes a nicer balance.
Well, and we have, major weather events like that are the things that we have the IGAs for services and equipment use and things like that. And, I can remember one snowstorm where, even the National Guard was in Gresham delivering prescriptions to homebound people.
0809, kind of that.
They were because they were the only ones that could get around. I think all of this language is great, and I think we're doing a great job with the work from home and setting up that technology, and that can work in lieu of coming to the office on these severe weather days. And I think that as we continue down this pathway of sort of seemingly unabated global climate unrest and change, you know, that the snow and ice events are going to become more frequent. Solid policy.
So I took some notes on some things to bring back specifically around the holidays and then I'll call it the benefits piece regarding the extended leave / bonus provision. So we'll craft some things for the full council to pick around from. Otherwise, we'll vision is in place for your next meeting.
Next up then is agenda item number 8, and this is a discussion of the 6th annual Pumpkin Fest Drive with them.
Let's go. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Today I'll be providing you a debrief on the Pumpkin Fest event. No council action is needed, but any feedback to help improve the event next year would be great. So for the event plan, it was scheduled on Saturday, October 30th from 10 to 1 p.m. And for the first time ever, we actually hosted it here at Wood Village City Hall and Civic Center, which was very exciting. We did actually have some lineup early in the morning. So around like 9:30, we started the event. And with that, you know, we ended up closing it a little early as well. So around like 11:45 was when we fully did breakdown. For staff and volunteers, I just really appreciate all the staff, volunteers, and our PSU fellow that, you know, that assisted through this whole event process that was leading up to it and even to the day of. It was a lot of hard work that really came through that. So I would say like the pre-bagging, I mean, you probably saw the pictures that was on Facebook and our Instagram accounts. We had about 10 volunteers from Natural Leaders Group that came. Staff did all the, you know, the pre-setup here in this room. So we were able to get those done in 2 hours. And then for our pumpkins, a little struggle while we're doing almost 400 of the pumpkin washing. On the first day, it started sprinkling and then raining. It was just kind of the full works. And then, you know, some of the pumpkins, it just got really muddy. Then we did the second round of pumpkins to make sure it's nice and shiny for the event. Then the day of, we had, you know, staff reported at 8:30 a.m. and volunteers at 9. We had 15 volunteers that day, so very cool for that. And for the event features, as mentioned earlier, you know, due to COVID, we had the drive-through, did the bags of apples, arts and craft kits, baking kits, and our pumpkins. And did a lot of media outreach, a lot of opportunities that we were able to take the photos, did the posting, got a lot of engagement through that. And as mentioned earlier, when we had to end the event a little early, ran out of items at around 11:30. Got some community feedback, mostly were positive. We had one person who was upset that didn't get the baking kit that day, but there was some engagement that was happening on our social media. People were providing feedback of wanting to get more items possibly next year. So something to consider. So the event highlights, as mentioned earlier, we had a total of 25 volunteers from the pre-bagging and the day of the event. We had 125 vehicles that came through, and after the closing of the event, had estimating about 25 to 50 attendees after the event. Put together 125 baking kits, 125 bag of gala apples. We got really lucky that they came through. So Charlie's Produce, they did a solid for this one. It was equivalent about 2,600 apples. We actually put together 250 candy bags, not 125. Also got 125 pumpkin carving tools. This was actually very tough to find. There was a shortage across the board. I hit up 5 different locations here to Portland, to Happy Valley, to Tigard area to get
Andy.
to Sandy. I literally hit up all the places and I called Walmart and Fred Meyer's just to hunt these carving kits down. Also, 350 pumpkins. As you notice, we ordered 300 assorted pumpkins and introduced 50 mini pumpkins. It was really, really popular, ran out within the first hour. So hope to get more mini pumpkins next year. Fiscal impact, the budget was 6,000. This was a breakdown of our budget. So our advertisement and marketing was 219. Arts and crafts was not 12,000. My bad for my fingers. Is actually almost 2,200 in total for that. I got a heart attack for a second. Totally went over budget. Seth will probably get a heart attack on that. Assorted pumpkins, 733, baking kits, 116, gala apples, 332, equipment supplies, 75, and food and snacks for volunteers for the pre-bagging and for the day of around 130. So we spent about 45.03 and 19 cents. Of course, including our 2021 sponsors. So make sure to thank them. There would be Advanced Metal and Wire, the Byway, Chevron, PGE, Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde, and Teresa's Pet and Food Supply. For our in-kind donations, we do have a pretty hefty, actually, in-kind donation supporters. So very appreciative that some of these organizations came through. Apollo Drain gave 250 Post-its. Charlie's Produce came through again this year and donated 5 cases of gala apples. That's about, if I'm estimating correctly, about almost 800 of the apples that they donated. Fred Meyer's provided $50 gift card, 150 apple bags and brown bags. And then Friends of Baseball also donated on the day of our event, the 250 swag bags. Oriental Trading, $25 credit that kind of went towards our arts and craft kits. And then Multnomah County also provides 250 reusable bag that we use for our arts and crafts. Lake East, they donate 250 coloring pages and 250 markers. Confederate Tribes also provides 750 stickers. Teresa's Country Feed and Pet, 200 reusable bags. Walmart provided $50 gift card that was also used towards our pumpkin carving kits. And West Columbia Gorge Chamber of Commerce provided $50 credit towards our event. Overall city goal, it met number 1, 3, and 8. And here are some photos of our pre-bagging event. So like I said, it was very, very exciting. We had really cool items. So I can understand we ran out really fast. And then the day of our event. Any questions?
Not that it matters, but on the arts and crafts kits, like you said, clearly we didn't spend the 12,000. But you mentioned that it might be 22, but the staff report says 1857.
Oh, so I had to move 2 of the bullet points and I merged it into the arts and crafts. So I added the pumpkin carving kit to that
Okay.
and 1 other bullet point.
Yeah.
Yep, that would be the equipment and supplies.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Well, Em, it sounds like it went off very well, not surprising as you organize these. And sorry I wasn't there to, give a hand washing those pumpkins. But let me ask you if I heard you correctly. One piece of feedback you got from somebody is that they wanted more things in the bags?
Oh, one person for the in-person event was upset that they didn't get a baking kit. And through our social media, more arts and craft bags.
Okay, all right.
And if I could just make a quick comment
Sure.
about the event, this was our 6th annual one, prior to pre-COVID. Our last pre-COVID Pumpkin Fest, we came close to kind of running out of things, but, was able to wrap up and do quite well. Last year was our first drive-through of this event and had some decent hours and decent supplies. And to say, we didn't struggle to give everything away, but we encouraged, to kind of
Take us
push
another
extra
pumpkin.
things off on
Yeah.
people. So this came, I think, to a big surprise, the popularity of what we saw. We had traffic backing up, not to Halsey, but onto Halsey on several occasions. And as Emmeline said, people started showing up at 9:30. So we made the decision to serve them as they came in, since we were ready to go, as to not further back up any kind of thing and have longer wait times. But as it was said, we lasted till 11:30, 11:45. We could have waited until 10. That would have pushed it back another half hour. And we were pretty efficient at getting cars through the queue. That anyone that was there, Mayor, John, I
Yeah.
mean,
The
a
weather was
minute and a
great.
half to get through all 3 stations, probably at most. We could have taken a lot more time, and we could have made the event last till 1. And the same people who didn't get served still wouldn't have gotten served. And we probably would have had other complaints about wait times or traffic blockages or all sorts of other things. This was just one of those events
Yeah.
that was exceptionally popular this year. And that's a great thing on the one hand, because it shows what we can do and the quality we can provide. It's also a little sad that some people go away without anything. And
Right.
certainly that's not what we intend to do, but it does happen. And this is, kind of the first event where it did happen. But certainly very proud of the production that was put on and the efforts put on the event.
Well, it sounds like it was very popular, so. And it is too bad, but sometimes that does happen when you're giving away things.
Well, and to staff's credit, a lot of people hung out for another hour after we'd given out everything to explain to people that came up why we had to close early. And for the most part, while people were disappointed, they were happy with the explanation. And certainly, everybody that got something, seemed overjoyed. I mean, I didn't do anything on the day except for wave and smile, and everybody that got something waved and smiled back. So, it's had a good time. And, maybe we learned that we need more for next year if we still can't go live. And maybe some other people learned that, the old saying, the early bird gets the worm. So.
Yeah, the facility worked exceptionally well. A
Yep.
nice route through, the setup. And yeah, hopefully next year it's an in-person where there's a little more on-site. People can hang out a little bit longer, which tends to just prolong the overall experience versus the drive-through where we were trying to just get them in, get them out. And it's always nice to do community events to get a little bit of face time at a drive-through, but not as much as with the in-person. The in-person is you always can get a little more and have those informal conversations. We really pretty pushed the line through of less chat, more stuff in with bags and get out of here. But it was a good event. I'm very, very proud of Em and her work.
To everyone who helped. So thank you.
Thank you, Em. Okay, agenda items 9 and 10 are items that require council action. And of course, everyone knows that we don't have a quorum. And so I would propose that we don't do any discussion on them unless someone might think that we're trying to come to a decision without enough board members.
I would support that decision. It's just about 10 o'clock down here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a wise choice, Mayor.
I can certainly say without discussion that the program was revised based on the comments at the October 14th council meeting. That's where I'll leave it.
Well, I thought, yeah, you had a good explanation on what I saw in the packet, so.
And then I attended this past Saturday the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium's annual strategy event, and had planned to discuss the potential legislative agenda and just bring everybody up to speed with what went on with that on that day. But that can certainly be saved until we have a large council. And so if no objections, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
I second. that.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Evan. Oh, Counselor Minor, you did get the note about November 18th, correct?
Yeah, I did, and that's, yeah, it's 5 to
5 to 7.
7 for you guys and 7 to 9 for me, yeah.
And so what do you, so we're gonna have Wood Village Burrito here. Do you want us to eat something in your honor?
Would you guys, really, everybody eat, a burrito and, at least toast me with a burrito?
We'll do that.
Okay, all right, Greg, thanks.